Interests us. Okay.
Yeah.
Tanya.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll call to order the Monday, June 10th meeting of the Oregon City Planning Commission. First item on the agenda is public comment on items that are not on the agenda. So is there anyone here wishing to speak on something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number, actually 4A, which is a public hearing. So I have a script to read on that. This evening, the public hearing on GLUA-19-0006 general land use application is scheduled tonight. Our role is to conduct the public hearing to make decisions about the matter before us. In making those decisions, we must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. Members of the Planning Commission are to be unbiased. Before the start of the hearing, I will ask the commissioners whether they have any potential conflicts, such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. I will also ask whether any of the commissioners have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge of relevant facts, such as from a visit to the site in question. Any member of the audience may question any commissioner about their disclosures. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. Quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. Hearing procedure steps are shown in the chart on the wall. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city can notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they're not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised on the record for the consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient detail and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the City Commission or State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So now we will open the public record for Oregon City file number GLUA-19-00006, SP-19-00025, and VAR-19-00001. So we'll start down with Mr. Mahoney. Does any tell us about any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest or visit to the site?
None whatsoever. No visit to the site, no contacts, and the other thing you said.
Okay. Commissioner Gage.
No ex parte contact. I haven't been to the site lately, but I've been in that parking lot many times.
Okay. Commissioner Stoll.
No ex parte contact. I took a drive through the parking lot and saw the proposed building site this evening.
Okay. Commissioner Guile.
What?
Ex parte contacts or
Just
site
reading
visit?
all the documentation again. No ex parte contacts, been down that street many, many times because it was the back way out of the post office.
Commissioner Schlagenhofer.
None to all.
None to all that, okay. Commissioner Johnson?
No ex parte contact. I visit Wilco quite often, so I visited the site, I guess.
Okay. And I have no ex parte contacts. I did visit the site. Does any member of the audience wish to question or challenge any of the commissioners on the statements that they've made? Okay. Then at this point, we will move on with the public record or public hearing portion, starting with staff report. And Ms. Vasileva.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
So I'm Diliana Vasileva. I'm the assistant planner for the city, and I'll be presenting the staff report and recommendation for planning file GLUA 19-00006, which is a site plan and design review application for a new cabinet manufacturing building and a planning commission variance for a variance to minimum site landscaping. So the property is located at the corner of First Street and Malala Avenue. It's just over 5 acres in size, and it's developed with the Wilco Farm Supply retail building as well as a warehouse. And the site has split zoning with the portion of the property that's closest to Malala Avenue being zoned general commercial, and the back portion of the property is zoned general industrial. Adjacent properties or surrounding properties along Malala Avenue also are zoned general commercial, and along First Street properties have general industrial zoning. So the proposed project includes a 6,500 square foot cabinet manufacturing building that's proposed at the northeastern corner of the site. The project includes removal of 20 parking stalls in order to accommodate the building, as well as a new landscaped area that is just west of the building. And in total, the project will result in a net loss of approximately 5,000 square feet of landscaping due to the removal of the lawn area in the northeast corner of the site there. So I'll quickly go over the applicant's submittal, but typically a site plan and design review application for a new industrial building would just be reviewed at a staff level and would not come before you. The reason that this is before you tonight is because of the variance application. So both applications get packaged together as a type 3 planning commission review, even though typically the site plan and design review alone is reviewed at a staff level. So really the variance to landscaping is what is triggering your review tonight. So I'll primarily focus on that, but quickly this is the applicant's site plan, again with the proposed building in the northeastern corner of the site, and a new landscaped area just to the west of the building. This is the west building elevation, which is facing the Wilco retail store, and then the north elevation is facing First Street. And then the east and south elevations, and this is a rendering of the building. This would be the elevation that's facing the Wilco retail store, and to the left there is the First Street elevation. So before I get into the variance, I just wanted to quickly explain some of our landscaping requirements. We have requirements for perimeter parking lot landscaping, which is a 5-foot landscaping buffer where the parking lot abuts adjacent properties or the public right-of-way, and that's shown in orange on this diagram. We also have landscaping standards for building buffer landscaping. which is a 5-foot buffer of landscaping where the parking lot abuts the exterior wall of a building. And it's shown in kind of a dark gray or black color. We also have standards for interior parking lot landscaping, which is landscaping located inside the surfaced area used for on-street parking and maneuvering. It's shown in green on this diagram, and our code requires that 10% of the surfaced area used for parking and maneuvering includes interior parking lot landscaping. And then on top of all of those, we have other site landscaping that doesn't really fit into any of those categories. And that's shown in the light gray color. So our code requires that 15% of the site has to be landscaped. And our code specifies that interior parking lot landscaping does not count towards the 15% minimum site landscaping requirement unless otherwise permitted by the dimensional standards of the underlying zone. So within the general commercial zone, the interior parking lot landscaping is allowed to be counted towards the 15% minimum, but within the general industrial zone, the interior parking lot landscaping is not allowed to be counted towards the 15% minimum site landscaping requirement. So that results in approximately 9,500 square feet of existing and proposed landscaping on this site that is interior parking lot landscaping within the general industrial zone that doesn't get to be counted towards the 15% minimum site landscaping requirement. If our code allowed for this landscaping to be counted, the site would be at 15.2% landscaping, so they would meet the standard if our code allowed for
Could you
this.
repeat that sentence? If the what?
So if our code within the general industrial zone allowed for this interior parking lot landscaping to count towards the 15% minimum site landscaping requirement, then the site would be at 15.2% landscaping, so it would meet the minimum site landscaping
Is there a reason why
requirement.
that was put into code? I mean, there's got to be a reason why we have that in there.
And why they're treated differently. That was
Yeah.
my question when I saw this.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it was written that way. For whatever reason, within this zone, it's not allowed to be counted. It's also not allowed to be counted within the campus industrial zone and within the institutional zone, but in our other zoning districts, it can be counted. So I'm not sure if it was some roundabout way to get more landscaping in those zones.
Laura, do you know if there's any history on that?
Well, what I can tell you is that in the proposed code amendments, that will go away. We'll treat all the zoning designations the same as far as
In the future.
landscaping is concerned.
What percent would that be?
With-
The 10 or the 15?
Which way does it go? Allowing to count the interior?
Yes.
Okay,
So you'll get credit for all of the landscaping on your site.
whether it's interior or not. Okay,
So under the proposed amendments, this wouldn't be an issue.
Correct.
Thank you.
So as the code stands now, this landscaping that's shown in green, that's the interior parking lot landscaping within the general industrial zone, is not allowed to be counted, and that results in overall site landscaping of 11%. So they're 4% short of the required 15%. So that is why a variance is required.
Come back next year.
So this is our variance criteria. I'll briefly go through each criteria and explain how it's met. So variance criteria A is that the variance from the requirements is not likely to cause substantial damage to adjacent properties by reducing light, air, safe access, or other desirable qualities. Staff does not believe that the decrease in overall site landscaping would result in any negative impact to adjacent properties. The site would continue to comply with the required perimeter parking lot landscaping standards where the parking lot abuts adjacent properties. And of course, as part of the public notice, we sent notice to property owners within 300 feet of the property and didn't receive any comments from adjacent property owners indicating that they would be negatively impacted by the variance. Variance criteria B is that the request is the minimum variance that would alleviate the hardship. The applicant is only proposing to remove landscaping in order to accommodate the building, so they're not requesting to unnecessarily remove any additional landscaping. Variance criteria C is that granting the variance will equal or exceed the purpose of the regulation to be modified. Again, if this landscaping were allowed to be counted, the site would be at 15.2% landscaping and it would equal or exceed the standard. And even though this landscaping isn't allowed to be counted towards the minimum site landscaping requirement, it still provides the same benefits as site landscaping, including stormwater retention and cooling and shading, as well as aesthetic benefits. Variance criteria D is that any impacts resulting from the adjustment are mitigated. The applicant has proposed an additional landscaping area that's approximately 3,000 square feet in size. Although the new landscaping area is still considered interior parking lot landscaping, that doesn't count towards the minimum. Again, it still provides the same benefits of landscaping. And the applicant is proposing a lot more interior parking lot landscaping than what our code requires. Again, our code requires that 10% of the surface area that's used for parking is landscaped with interior parking lot landscaping, and the site has about 18% landscaping. And in addition, the applicant is utilizing solar panels for the proposed building, as well as vertical landscaping that would grow up the walls of the building. Although that doesn't get counted towards any landscaping requirement, again, it provides similar benefits to shade and cool the building, and aesthetic benefits, and solar panels, of course, would efficiently cool the building. Variance criteria E is that no practical alternatives have been identified which would accomplish the same purpose and not require a variance. The applicant considered a green roof for the new building, but it turned out to be very cost prohibitive and very difficult to maintain and to ensure that all of those plants survive. And the applicant also considered removing additional parking for more landscaping, but that would create more interior parking lot landscaping that doesn't get to be counted towards the minimum site landscaping requirement, so it still would require a variance.
Before you move from that page, a couple of questions for you. I read the first part of approximately 3,000 square feet of additional interior parking lot landscaping, and then just what you just read. Are we taking away parking spots for potential employees when we're doing 3,000 more square feet of parking landscaping? Are we cutting down how many parking spots are currently there to add all this landscaping?
Yeah, so the additional 3,000 square feet, I think, results in a loss of 11 parking stalls. But the site is currently overparked, even with the addition of the new building, which...
Overparked, you mean so many cars it's overparked, or?
Meaning they have more parking spaces than the maximum that our code allows. stalls. So the removal of those additional parking spaces would still keep them between them. Actually, I think they still would be a little bit over parked. They would still have a few additional stalls over the maximum.
Do we know how many employees are expected to be at a location like this? Would there be enough parking for those employees without taking away parking from the other existing businesses? Do we know that?
We know that they comply with our minimum and maximum parking requirements. I might defer to the applicant to speak on, whether employees have adequate parking or are able to
Mainly,
find
these
parking.
2 points up here brought up that question in my mind. Thank you.
And the last variance criteria is that the variance conforms to the comprehensive plan and the intent of the ordinance being varied. I have listed some of the applicable goals of our comprehensive plan, which include using land efficiently, development of existing industrial land, good air quality within the city and stormwater management practices, as well as orderly redevelopment of existing city areas. And staff found that granting the variance would conform to all the applicable goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. So with that, staff recommends approval of the planning file GLUA 19006, SP 19000025, and VAR 19000001 with conditions as identified in the staff report. And I'm happy
Any
to
questions for
answer any
staff?
questions.
No?
One,
Done my question.
if the new code, if adopted, is going to remove the requirement for this to come before the planning commission, why wasn't it just wait until that code is reviewed and acted on?
Well, as I said, come back next year, we'll do it. No, just kidding, just kidding.
I think it was a timing issue for the applicant to get going on construction of the building as soon as possible. So this was the best option for them. The application is subject to the code that's in place the day it's submitted. So they would have had to wait until the new code is adopted, then submit, then go through, the public notice and the review process. So it would have ended up being longer for them rather than just requesting the variance.
Okay, I have a question in that, on that note. So if the code gets amended and they no longer would need that much landscaping, could they go back later and apply for a permit to add some more parking spots if they need them? That landscaped area that they're removing the parking spots on the northeast side, could they put parking in later?
They would have to remain between the minimum and maximum parking requirements. So I think they're a little bit over the maximum, so they wouldn't be able to add additional parking.
All right, so if they're okay with the parking, then,
Then yes, they could.
okay.
So once this is if approved, the variance just goes away and drops off the books, or is it still on the record that this was a variance at this place and time?
It would go on the record that this was a variance at this place and time.
Okay, all right.
But any future, once the new code is in place, any future development would be subject to the new
Okay.
code.
Thank you.
All right, very good.
I'll wait.
Can I address the question that was specifically
Can you-
asked about why not wait?
Can that be handled when you have to come up at the microphone and get on the record? But if you could address that in your comment, in your presentation, that'd be great. Any other questions for staff? Okay, then we'll go ahead with the applicant presentation, maximum 15 minutes. Whoever's doing that,
Why don't you come up?
come on up. And introduce yourselves, please, and your city of residence.
Hi, I'm George Leiser, the property owner and potential landlord for this project. I live at 9855 Southeast top of Scott Street in Happy Valley, actually Clackamas County is not part of the incorporated town. So occupation retired. What else you need to, semi-retired. What else would you like?
Name and city's all we need to know.
Yeah,
Go
okay.
ahead. You-
Andrew Montgomery, I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm the architect on the project. Do you want my address?
No, don't need that. Just- Okay, go ahead with your presentation.
Go ahead.
Well, we wanted to address the one question in specific here, why not wait until they change? Well, this project has been ongoing for a couple of years, and we've been waiting. When we met with Eric Underwood, a former development officer, he assured us that this code change was going to be revised on January 1st of this year. And that actually caused us to renew our interest. I'd pretty much given up on this project. And, because I'd already waited. And there's complications because of the bank financing requirements and what have you. I had to take out a loan for the full anticipated cost of this project a year ago in October, and I've been paying it back and everything. The money is gradually disappearing to even do this project. And I checked with Deliana before the meeting, is that, how close are we? And it's indefinite. They keep postponing, putting it out and everything else. So to answer your question, is that question should really be addressed to the people who are in charge of getting their job done. And, I'd be happy to wait, except that we've been waiting for a year and a half and nothing's happening. So that's the reason. And Deliana has actually suggested that we apply for a variance because this project is just dying because of lack of attention and because no decisions have been made.
Okay.
Planning commission meetings have a tendency to alter one's life.
Well, and
With due respect.
the
One other
timetable
comment.
the timetable for the code revisions, that's in the hands of the city commission at this point.
One last comment.
had
I'll
our
be
budget
80 on
back.
my next birthday, and time is running out.
I think Deliana did a great job. She fixed a lot of my errors. I came in late on this, but a couple of things that I noticed and I've only been involved since January, in my research is that this code for this property was inclusive of those islands, and then at some point they took them away, and now they're bringing them back. And when George and I were sitting down trying to look at whose property we could take and make green to get it up to the 15%, he had mentioned all the leases that he's bound to with these people. And the one client he didn't want to, break the leases and not give them their parking, but the one client did agree, right, to take out some parking spots that they were put in kind of after the fact. Maybe Deliana knows more about that, but if you look at the original drawings, that was a turn for trucks. And then somebody went in there and put in stripes. So that client agreed to give up that space. That's parking.
Yeah, because it was not
But ultimately,
dedicated in the lease.
ultimately tonight, I don't know if you can do this, Deliana, but I would like you to say that we don't have to make that green. We can leave that for the client to park in, even though the site overall is over. But we're doing it, to reach the 15% temporarily until the new code kicks in. Is that right, Deliana?
Right, the new code would allow that to be all the interior parking lot landscaping.
But it sounds like now, if we do include this piece, it's forever green, which I'm okay with, but I'm not sure how your client feels about that. If there's a possibility to leave it parking, that'd be great, that's all. But I don't want to complicate things either. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned earlier, once it's green, it'd take an act of God to turn it back to parking, right?
Well, as long as you're in between the minimum and maximum parking requirements. So
Right.
if ever a new building was built or an addition that required more parking, that allowed you to add more parking while still being in between the minimum and maximum, then you could.
I would just add a comment, is that the Wilco Farm Store, they have a lot of very large trucks, primarily flatbed trucks. They unload them with forklifts and everything, and they actually use that area for maneuvering their forklifts and everything, and unloading these trucks. Converting that to green is going to create a hardship on them also. So, it just, in terms of their truck maneuvering. So, that is another consideration, just to alleviate traffic congestion coming through there. When those trucks are parked there, then auto traffic is impacted severely.
Is there a matter of public safety involved?
Well, we haven't had any problems yet, but then we haven't taken out the parking. We haven't had to deal with that because, they're getting by with it now, but.
Can we see the slide that shows the current conditions?
Yeah.
Is there any customers coming and going from this location?
Here's where
They're gonna go the,
I go there sometimes.
loop down and start.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Is there any customers coming and going from this warehouse, or is it construction?
The new building?
Yeah, your building, is there gonna?
No, it's a
Regular
cabinet
customer.
manufacturer facility.
That's what I thought, just manufacturing
What kind of
only.
delivery?
Well, there's a, pardon?
Should I maybe answer some of the questions?
I don't know, we're limited to 2 people.
No, you'll have to introduce yourself, but you're welcome to speak as well.
I'm Kyle Wood. I live here in Oregon City, in the McLaughlin district, and
Are you part of the applicant's presentation?
I'm the owner of Precision Cabinets.
Okay,
Of the building, yeah.
yes, okay.
And so I can, answer, we do plan on having people come to the cabinet shop, but it'd be more like a by appointment type of a point of sale for custom cabinetry. We wouldn't anticipate having, walk-by traffic stopping in type of thing.
Okay.
Be more of a destination type of thing.
What kind of deliveries are going to be getting? What kind of in and out truck traffic?
All of our materials are inside. The delivery trucks are typically the tarped sides.
Full-size tractor trailer?
No, most of the local delivery, the hardwood, the plywood companies, they mostly run like 20, 24-foot trailers.
Okay.
So just a single trailer
Would it
for
be
most
harder
local
to
deliveries.
turn the truck around with that landscape on the northeast corner there?
The current.
Well, that curve right now,
Is that useful?
That's not,
It's parking right now.
that's the part that got striped out after the fact.
that's Wilco Warehouse, not their building.
Right, but they're going to be trucks pulling in there, and they're going to have to maneuver in that area.
Oh, yeah,
So most of the landscape is in.
not the cabinet company's trucks.
No. Current, yeah.
Trucks delivering materials.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for the trucks with that landscape.
I think potentially, maybe the wisest call on this would be to, put a nice landscape strip in there, because all of the space isn't required. Take out those parking stalls, but leave some space. Maybe not put in 3,000 feet of landscaping, but put in 1,500 feet and leave some room for trucks. That may be the most.
So the question is, can we allow that variance?
I would encourage you to look at the approval criteria in the application before you. I appreciate the conversations and the concerns.
Just in the practicality.
But if there's a parking space now and they're going to convert it to landscaping, that really doesn't affect the maneuverability because a car can't use it, or the truck isn't going to swoop in there anyway. I would encourage the commission to think about a site that's currently overparked and you do have a variance and it has variance criteria like mitigation and things like that. You can't ignore that. We have to have findings in the record for how you comply with all the variance criteria. The applicant could come back after the code gets amended and do a minor site plan design review to change those parking spaces at a later date if they want to. So there are options there.
Okay. So I have a question for you then, Lori. Since we know that it's in the code and the way this, I've been attending all those code meetings, planning and city, why put that, I know it's a variance, but why put that constraint on them now when we know in the future it's not going to be there?
We don't know.
Well, there's two things.
But the code is,
The code has not been adopted.
Right.
I mean, it's still subject to change.
Okay.
And also legally, these are what the criteria are. They are what they are the day they submit their land use application. And so applicants can choose, to wait or not to wait. And so I want to make sure that you really think about the application before you and the criteria involved with that, and that we have adequate findings as they relate to
So if
those
they
criteria.
can go forward with constructing the building, and they don't have to start with the landscaping, they can come back before the landscaping goes in, if the code gets changed, and ask for that variance at that point, right?
They can amend their site plan design review at a later date through subsequent
How
processes.
much time do they have to complete the project?
They've already worked on it a few years.
No, I mean, to finish, get a final approval on their,
This is going to be horrible because it depends on if you're talking about new code or current code. So under current code, they have a couple of years to get building permits issued, 2 years, and then they can get a 1-year extension on that. So a total of 3 years just to get
For their
building
final?
permits in, yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, just building permits.
Oh.
And then under the proposed code amendments, it'll be extended out to where you have, I think it's 5 years.
okay,
To
but it
get
sounds
that
like
in
they
the
want to get
building
going on it
permit.
right now. So,
They've waited
once
a
they
while.
pull permits, how long do they have to finish it?
Until the permits expire.
That is?
Eternity.
It depends. You have to keep moving forward on your building permits for
Okay.
them to keep. If you go too long without doing any work at all, then they do expire, so years.
All right, well, it sounds like.
More time than they need, from what it sounds like.
Well, they're okay with the
Okay,
way
why
it
don't-
is, so I guess that's what we should vote on.
Pardon me for interrupting, I'm sorry. Let's let them finish their presentation, then we'll see if there's any other public comment.
Okay.
Then we can ask questions of them,
Okay.
right?
We just needed to clarify.
Is there anything else that you want to present to the commission that we haven't already heard?
I don't think so, I think.
Okay. So, all right. Now, are there any questions for the applicant?
Nope, I think most of them went to Lori.
All right, thank you. At this time, are there any other members of the public wishing to comment on this application? There's no cards, but is there anybody who wishes to comment? Okay. Moving on would be rebuttal, which we don't need to do because there was no public comment to rebut.
I'm ready to make a motion. Unless there's a discussion amongst us.
Let's ask a couple of questions first, and then we'll entertain your motion. So, assuming that the code change goes through, that they can count the interior landscaping, you said it would be at 15.2%, right? And the requirement is going to be 15.
Correct.
Would that 0.2, if that much square footage is carved off of that new landscaping area, does that do anything to alleviate that truck turn thing? Are we talking, no, it's not enough dirt, might move it a foot or something?
I have a clarifying question on that regarding the percentages. So I saw an 18 in there as well. So the 15.2, does that include this parking area being converted, or is that what gets us to 18?
The 15.2 includes the parking area being converted. There's two different standards. One of them is that 15% of the entire property has to be landscaped. And then the other standard is that 10% of just the parking lot, so excluding any buildings, 10% of the parking lot area that's used for parking and maneuvering has to have interior parking lot landscaping. So they are at 18% for that 10% requirement. So they're way over the 10%, but under the 15.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, even if they had more landscaping than they needed, we wouldn't allow them to take out landscaping and install another parking stall if they were already over the maximum number of stalls they could have.
Not that.
But they could take out a little bit of that added
0.2
area.
But,
0.2 or.
but what would it be converted to?
That would be.
Yeah, for
Drive
For drive, yeah, for truck turn. But if it does, if it's not enough to make a difference, then it's not worth arguing about.
Yeah.
guess I do have just one question. The vertical landscaping on the building, is that going to include the First Street side? Because that side of the building in your rendering is a little stark.
Can you have Diliana?
Either ask Juliana or ask the applicant to come back up,
Okay. Okay.
whichever the chair prefers.
Yes, I would prefer them to come up.
Yeah, that's the,
State your name for the- state your
that's the
name.
north, yeah, Kyle Wood.
Thank you.
That's the north wall, and so our proposed vertical wall would be on that north face.
On the First Street side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lots of shade-loving, climbing type plants, so it's kind of a green wall. And all of those windows that you see on the thing, those will all be backlit with LED powered from the solar. So at night, those are like glowing little stars that are kind of in the landscaping of that green wall.
Wow.
There's been a lot of thought going into this building. It's also a very green building. It'll take almost no energy to heat or cool.
Cool.
So R30 walls, R65 roof, stuff like that, so.
Okay, nice. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Gao, you have a motion? Oh,
You usually
oh, I have to
close the public
hearing.
record.
Yeah, sorry, okay. Public record's closed? Sorry.
Now would be the appropriate time for motion.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. And this is rare that I actually do this, but I move that we approve the GLUA-19-406/SP-19-00025/variance 19-00001 site plan and design review.
A second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any other comment? Okay.
It's an appropriate place for it.
Call for the question.
Okay, Commissioner Mahoney,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Schlagenhofer,
Aye.
Commissioner Gage,
Aye.
Commissioner Stoll,
Aye.
Chair Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Guile.
Wow, I went last. Aye.
Motion passes.
Great.
That's rare that I.
Thank you very much.
Usually I get a question.
You know, if you could argue about this thing.
Okay. Move on to the next item in the agenda, PC 19-059, City Commission request for additional planning commission review of certain code amendments. Mr. Walter. Speaking of code amendments.
1 second. And so it-
Amazing that we're going to go through these again when we've spent most of last year going over it.
You don't want to send them back.
All right. So at the city commission level, there's been a number of items that you've reviewed that have been sent back for further discussion. And the final one that we wanted to tackle tonight is the issue of height limits in the mixed-use downtown zone. And what I've done is prepare a lot of graphics that I'm going to go through. I only got about 16 slides and some photos. And then we can talk about what led to the height limits and various other things. And what we're looking for at the end of the presentation is, you know, some indication from the commission where you think that height limits would be appropriate if you feel that way. And we want to go back to the city commission with some pretty clear recommendations. So we want to talk this through. Yes.
Pete, I have some questions about this. Only three of us were with the commission that made these decisions with all kinds of hashing over it and talking about all this. The
Yeah.
four newer ones are not familiar with all the
what
things we
was in-
discussed.
right.
And I keep asking, the city is sending these back to us.
Right.
But we don't have the expertise that was here the last time.
Right.
Of people who were familiar with the reasons why we did it. Is there any way when you present this, you could explain, or do you have that capability of
Yeah.
why we made those decisions in the first place?
All right.
Because this is going to be all new to some people.
So in your packet, under the PC memo regarding the MUD height limits, that is a summarization of the prior planning commission and city commission discussion. And I'm going to pull that up and go through that.
The other thing is you'll get to tell them yourself because they
Yeah.
wanted a joint work session on it. So
Yep.
you'll get to chat with them
Having a
directly.
joint work session beyond this?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
With the city commission, so
yeah.
did both commissions on this particular topic.
Okay.
Yeah, but we definitely want to make sure that we represent what the planning commission said previously as well.
Because I think Denise and Damon were the strongest voices on it
Right,
at the time.
and talk about that. Good point. So this map we've got at the beginning and at the end of the presentation, so we can refer to it. But basically, this is a summary of what the height limits are in the mixed-use downtown zone district. So it's all one zone district. Don't let the colors dissuade you, but the colors are there to represent the various differences in height limits within that same zone and what the effect is of the actual written code on the tax lots. The areas that are colored sort of red would have a 45-foot maximum building height. Areas that are green are within the downtown design district, which has a 58-foot height. And everywhere else is the 75-foot maximum building height. And I'm going to go into more detail on those. The intent of the mixed-use downtown district here is what you read when you go to the zoning code and you look at what the intent of that zone is. So it's intended to apply from, the south end of Main Street where the Willamette Falls district ends, all the way to as far north as just past 213 north of where the tire shop now is. That's all mixed use downtown. And the intent of that district is it's intended in the long term as it builds out to be high density residential mixed use area. Typical new development would have retail on the ground floor and office and residential above. It's intended to encourage, a highly urban walkable environment which is supportive of transit. And so I'm not going to read this entire thing, but that's kind of what the zone is for. When you actually read the code, in addition to what the permitted uses are in that zone and that sort of thing, there's dimensional standards. And the areas that I've highlighted in red here are the exception areas from the building height. So under D, it says 75 feet except for the following locations where the maximum building height shall be 45 feet. And those three areas are properties between Main Street and McLaughlin Boulevard and 11th and 16th, which I'll show you, property within 500 feet of the end of the Oregon Trail Center property, and property within 100 feet of single-family detached or detached units. And this is current code. And what the Planning Commission has changed for proposed new language is instead of saying property within 100 feet of single-family detached or attached units, it's going to say abutting, directly abutting. And then you read further down the list, and there's a specific standard that pertains to the downtown design district, which is the area along the historic Main Street part of downtown. And the height limit is measured against the Masonic Hall and is 58 feet. So, first thing we mentioned was properties between Main Street and McLaughlin, 11th and 16th. And this is just a graphic that represents that block system. So you can see 11th and Main there, that's down near Rennie's and where the that area is, and then clear north to where the Subaru lot abuts the on-ramp to I-205.
Before you change from that,
Yeah.
Could you explain this is what the last planning commission decided, correct?
Well, I'm just demonstrating what the
Right.
current code is, yeah.
But could you explain why that decision?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that, yeah.
Okay,
I'm going to talk about that. And then this is a representation of the same thing showing the tax lots, and also shows contours and that sort of thing. So these are 10-foot contours showing the bluff and, the area and what you're looking towards at the river. Here's some photos we can refer back to. I'm not going to go through each one of these. A great way to get a feel for this on your own time is to go on Google Street View and just play around with your mouse. I found that that's actually a really good way to get the lay of the land. Basically, you're starting at the Oregon City bus station and then working your way north to the area shown on the bottom right. And then so that's that block. And then we've also mapped single-family residences that are either in the mixed-use downtown zone as pre-existing uses or directly abutting the mixed-use downtown zone, whether or not they're at the same elevation or not. So any red dot that you see there is our best estimate of where a single-family residential zone, residential property is. And then, as we talked about, the Masonic Temple sets the height limit for the downtown design district. And that's that area bounded in green. And it goes from the underpass on 99E up to the alleys between 10th and 11th Street in downtown. And then the end of the Oregon Trail Center has a 500-foot area within which 45 feet is the height limit. And what we talked about during the Planning Commission is that the intent of these, as far as we can ascertain, was to protect views of the end of the Oregon Trail Center. But it's not spelled out in the code from where to where. The consensus of most of the people who looked at this was that it was protecting views from I-205 towards the EOT, or the end of the trail center. And so bear that in mind. It's not totally clear in the code. Tom, you're welcome to talk about that as well and what the conversation was. In the comprehensive plan, the city's 2004 comprehensive plan, we have generalized statements of goals and policies that talk about the need to protect views. But unless you specify very clearly which view it is you want to protect and from where, it can lead to ambiguity. So bear that in mind.
How tall is the hotel? I forgot.
The hotel that was approved through the Planning Commission was a 5-story hotel that had to be built in the floodplain, so they had to build it above floodplain, and they also had a 45-foot height limit because they were within 500.
And they had to turn it sideways so that it wouldn't.
Yeah, and they had to turn it sideways. That's right.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a number of things that they had on that property which were challenging and which they requested a adjustment for and received an adjustment from the Planning Commission. So this is the tax lot boundaries of the tax lots that are affected by the end of the Oregon Trail Center buffer. And then I just briefly wanted to mention, I did a little bit of research on what it is that drives height limit for developers, and there's all sorts of information out on the web, but I thought that this was a compelling summary from a development perspective. So in the development business, the height of the projected buildings is one of the main elements of decision-making for investment, driven by many factors: technical, spatial, economic, and financial. The main economic factors that stimulate the expansion of high-rise development includes rising demand for commercial and residential space, shortage of attractively located urban land within city limits, and the high prices of that land. And it's a pretty detailed study, but they were really talking about, skyscrapers and things, starting at 10 stories and going up type of thing. So, the difference between a 4-story building and a 6-story building wasn't within the realm of that study,
Peter,
Yeah.
Peter, Pete, whichever.
Pete, fine. Yeah.
I don't remember all the conversation, and I know that many on the city commission are historically minded, from Denise to Rocky and all that. I'm not sure why they would send it back to us when they have the decisions-making power within them. But wasn't some of the main conversation was that they didn't want to detract from along the riverfront, the historical nature of a lower street, and then as it build up, because we don't want huge towers down there blocking the riverfront? Is that it? I couldn't remember.
You've got varying opinions. You've got the desire to respect the downtown area and what's been built before, and you've got the desire to see redevelopment of that area in the downtown area. And certainly you've got a desire to, try to preserve views towards the river in certain locations and that sort of thing. And, if you have a 45-foot building, built right on Main Street, or a 75-foot building built on Main Street, depending on where you are, that might not make any difference at all. But if you have a 45-foot building and then a 75-foot building in the future, then you have what's called a step-down effect, and the people on the upper floors of the higher building can see the river. You know, they have the nice views potentially. But for somebody sitting or standing on the bluff, let's say on Apperson Boulevard up above the mixed-use downtown zone, looking down towards the river, I don't know what the difference in your view quality is, whether it's 45 or 75, but the direct impact of a 75-foot building right next to you in that, when you're downtown, whether or not you're looking for a view, you may just be concerned about the mass of that building in your downtown area.
And currently, the highest is the 58-foot tall building.
Pardon?
Currently, the tallest
Oh, yeah.
on Main Street is 58.
Yeah, that building is 58, supposedly.
That's 3 stories or 4?
That's actually a ground floor retail with 3 stories above, so.
The buildings are.
Yeah, you know, part of the thing that's driving this too is, you know, we've got a regional center designation for this area, which we're one of 16 regional centers. They want to see transit-oriented development, and they're going to help fund transit-oriented development if we zone it and build it that way. And I'm talking about Metro and ODOT and that sort of thing. So there's that. We do have comprehensive plan goals and policies that talk about concentrating density in the mixed-use downtown, not only for commercial development, but also for residential, so that we have a 24-hour community downtown and it really becomes a vibrant place. And then we've had several other studies being done in the past. You know, we had the parking study downtown, which talked about ways to incentivize development and, you know, what you can get in return for if a developer builds parking, what could you offer them to build parking? And one of the things that study talks about is height bonuses and things like that. It doesn't specify anything. It just says this is a strategy. And then in 2011, that upper left document was put together for the benefit of the Urban Renewal Authority to look at a couple of sites that the city owns in downtown at 10th and Main and 12th and Main. And, you know, they did a couple of pro formas. They looked at everything that was a cost and everything that was a revenue, and they kind of spec'd out a couple of different size buildings, one at 3 stories and then one at about 6. And so, you know, they're looking at a minimum of you know, 3 to 4 stories of residential above commercial.
Was there not a hotel approved down about 10th and Main?
I don't think it went through the land use process, no. There was some discussion with that.
Proposal,
yeah.
but it never got
Didn't
that
go
far.
through, okay. I wonder how high that was.
So there's some serious work done to look at, you know, higher density development in downtown and what's an incentive and what things can be done. So I just want to put that there too. And this is referring back to the original map that I showed you. So just to get our bearings, this is the end of the Oregon Trail Center, right there.
The purple is the new apartments, correct?
Well, let's see.
Cove area?
Yeah, this is all the Cove.
Okay.
And then you got, this new apartments are right here. And this is the water area, so it's colored. But, and then the blocks that have the 45-foot height limit directly adjacent 99E, you're right here.
And that is the one that we're really talking about, right? This, are we going to stay 45 or go to 75 in those 5 blocks between 16th and...
Yeah, well, I think we also want to look at whether or not, you know, here you have a very large tax lot, which is where the Home Depot is on, is affected by a property that is far smaller than it, you know, in a way. So, you know, I think we probably want to talk about the redevelopment potential along here. If you're talking about preserving views from I-205, you know, you might want to look at the blocks directly abutting I-205, and that sort of thing.
The, sorry.
The giant tax lot
Yeah.
that is adjacent to
Home Depot?
the end of the Oregon Trail and Home Depot. Okay, so
Yeah.
we have that whole area is marked as 45.
Yep.
And that's because it's within 500.
That's because it's, the end of the Oregon Trail is, within 500 feet of that
500
tax
feet.
lot.
But does that then encompass the entire tax lot or only the part of the tax lot that's
Code
within
says
500 feet?
for properties within, so it doesn't say for development within 500 feet of, it says for properties within 500 feet.
Those homes are.
And that kind of, you know, that's what I take it to mean, is
So
it
it,
affects
okay,
that
so,
entire.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's,
Unless we want to clarify that.
You can't build homes and all that in an area that's on a landfill though, right?
Well, it's a mixed-use area, so the uses that are allowed in the mixed-use downtown allow for residential use.
On a landfill.
Well, the engineering and whatever mitigation needs to be done to make it safe to build on that landfill is a separate question. And
Bridgeport
so,
ran into troubles with fumes coming out into the stores, and I thought they
Right.
weren't going to allow it for anything for residential. What I was going to ask, the Cove, what were the height limits on the Cove?
what do they
They're
go
not
on
very
now?
tall.
75.
75.
75?
No, that's the maximum height.
Okay, because there are only 2 or 3
Up to 75.
stories, I think, in the Cove.
I can't quite recall the number. So the things we want to think about is just more of a global picture of what does our regional center mean and what do we want out of our regional center or our downtown? And then also, this is a crazy map. There's so many different heights and it don't seem to make a lot of sense. And so the provisions in our code were the downtown design district, which seems to be like this tidy, neat thing. And so maybe we don't have to talk about that as much.
Right.
But it's really the provision of those blocks near 99 between 11th and 16th, and should those be lower? And if so, why? And the provision for adjacent, if you're within 100 feet of a residential, then you're also limited in height, recognizing that this is an area that's used to be zoned something else and now is zoned for high density. So we do have some residential sort of like up near Center Street that is blocking the height limitation down below. And then the other part is the ring around EOT. So those are what the provisions have today, but sort of think beyond those to what should the height limits be and why in the future if we could change them to be
Did you just
anything.
call it high density down there?
Height limits?
Did you say high density though, that is rated to be high density?
It's a regional center. It's a special area within the metro region.
Is the regional center the downtown area or just Oregon City itself? Because Oregon City itself is growing by leaps and bounds on every concept plan, but nobody ever said that downtown was the center.
It is the downtown area, so within this regional center zoning designation, we can shoot you a map of where our official regional center is, but it's basically
The
MUD.
regional center with the largest landfill in it.
This.
Well, it's meant to be a place where others
back to
can
the
go
one
and have
that's
their
that one, a
services
45-foot
met,
stripe.
so.
Yeah, stay there for a
They need a
second.
grocery store.
Do that one first.
Well, I know, but right, can you get residential if you're limited to 45-foot height? And
And I was thinking residential, you need a grocery store someplace for people to go to, and there's nothing down there.
so how do you have to,
The code, I mean, whatever development happens is up to the developer,
Yeah.
but the code is what allows them to do what. Okay, so,
Yep.
question. To me, this makes sense.
Yes.
You're stair stepping down to the river. Okay, now go to the one with all the colors.
why do we, can I ask more questions? Or,
Sit out there and give us your.
just because we need to be able to explain things to people. Why does it make sense to stair step on McLaughlin Boulevard?
I don't think I've been in any city where they.
I didn't say that it.
Oh, okay.
But I understand why that was done in order to stair step. Do we need to? That's a different question.
Oh, sorry, I
That's not
thought
the
you
que-
just
okay.
made a statement that you wanted
So
to.
this is clean. Now go to the map with all of the colors on it.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
The multicolor one.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's a good.
Why did this get all checkerboard? What are these purples
There are,
doing?
there's some existing single family that's affected.
Is that within the zone, what it is now?
Oh,
What's built there, or is it the limit?
No, that's the limit.
That is the limit, so
Yeah.
you've got the
So
red in
these
the,
areas can't go to 75 because there's an existing single-family home.
Within 100.
Within 100 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the only place in our code where we have something based off existing uses, not zoned uses. So it's
Okay.
probably zoned for high density something, but it's a non-conforming single-family use, which then triggers lower heights within 100 feet. And so in the recommendations from the planning commission to the city commission, they said, no, let's just make the adjacents be limited in height, but if you're, a couple properties down, you could be 75 feet.
And this map is at the 100 feet or the adjacent?
This is everything. This is your snapshot of what we get with our zoning code today.
The 100 feet.
Yeah. So that's
100 feet.
So you asked the question of why stair step down, but even in Portland, I've stayed in the hotels there, they're back away from the waterfront. They don't put anything directly on the waterfront there, Vancouver, BC, a lot of the places I've been to, they stair step it down, so even those hotels or those apartments, and Vancouver's filled with those, they wanted to have a little bit more of a view because they don't put anything directly on the rivers or the bays.
I'm just getting you guys to say
Yeah,
why.
I'm just saying, that's my thought, is because I've been to all these places where Portland, even the Marriott hotels on this side, and then you've got the old Harbor Drive or the Tom McCall Park, but they don't put anything directly on the river, and they stair step the hotels and everything in Portland up as they go into downtown Portland, but not right on the waterfront. That's my
Now,
way of
may
thinking.
I
you
ask
have
a
to?
question too?
Sure.
Did I read something in this that stated that even if that has to stay 45 feet, doesn't mean it's not going to still block the view of properties behind it?
It still could.
I would think
A
so.
short building behind it.
It'll certainly block the first 45 feet.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes.
Can you go
It
back
will.
to the 45,
It's just
75 map?
how much is it?
right.
There, that to me, and now is this a present conditions that we have?
Yeah, well, the gray outlines are supposed to be representing buildings. It's two-dimensional, obviously, it doesn't show you any.
I understand that it's 45 today, and the question may be to the city commission and the planning commission, do we want that to go to 75? So now when I look at this map, it says 45, but we may be looking to go to 75. What does this 75 behind here that kind of gets at Patty's thing? If we had, I don't think it's all 75 back here.
Some of it's lower, yes.
Is that another proposal that we're not being,
That's the 100 foot within a single family.
but it says it's 75, but we've
In general,
found on the map.
That's the
Lots of
maximum,
buildings
that's the
that-
maximum for the future. not
Yeah,
necessarily
yeah, so
75.
the ones back from it, all those reds, they're down to 45 feet because they're within 100 feet of a single family dwelling, it's my understanding.
But it's only
And those 100
potential.
feet of residential dwellings, what zone are those residential dwellings in?
Well, some are mixed use downtown and.
Some are in mixed
and
use,
some
so
are
they
something
could
else.
go
Some are
to
something else.
55, 75,
That's true.
but they certainly wouldn't have a view of
If
the
they're-
river, even if we stayed with 45 on Main and McLaughlin.
I think back also that we're about to do a river walk, and I'd hate to see the river walk filled with nothing but tall towers all along the walk that you're trying to enjoy our city, and especially all the tourism that we get here to see. All of a sudden, you're in a solid, here's a river, and here's a solid block of huge hotels or condos or things like that, and I think
But isn't the river walk
it's going to come
going
from,
to 80 foot?
it's going to come from 213 all the way down to the
But
waterfall.
that is going to be, you can build
Not
80 foot
elevated.
stuff in there.
No, it's not elevated, it's right on level so it
Well,
doesn't flood.
The
bluff is-
the height limit on the Willamette Falls Legacy site is taller than these height limits
Then
here.
45 feet, the river walk's going to be above 45 feet?
I think it is
No,
80.
Yeah, I think it's
The height, the river walk, the river walk
got a
itself will not
slide
be
for
at
that.
that, but the development adjacent
Sorry.
Right.
or
Down to
some
the
of the
right
buildings
there.
that
80
are-
feet.
yeah.
here shows what we've got, John. From
Yeah, it's 80
75
feet.
way up in this end, the river
Yeah, that's down to Willamette Falls. That's
Yeah.
Willamette Falls district. The other end was the older district down there. The Willamette Falls is different. And that's going to be condos and restaurants and overlooking the falls. They want it a little higher.
Well, I think you'll be able to see the river from the Riverwalk, but I don't think you're gonna be able to see over these buildings, and I don't think you're gonna be able to see the bluff anyway.
Yeah, but if you're down here looking at the river.
That's different,
you're looking
though.
at the falls.
Yeah, you're looking at the
Looking
falls,
That's
I'm
different,
really
yeah.
worried about the hill
Yeah,
behind you.
and if you get out far enough, you can see for a ways, but you're right.
From the river, you could probably see the bluff, but I don't think you can see it from the sidewalk anyway,
Yeah,
even at 45.
because there's,
And there'll be more water.
The angle,
the bank of the river is way above the water level.
yeah, I've been fishing down there, you can't see anything but the wall.
Yeah.
So right now it shows 80, 58, and then 75 instead of 45 right there on that. But
Okay, so the city commission sent this back to us, what do they want us to do?
argue.
What do they want that's constructive? I mean,
They want a joint work session,
Yeah.
so they're not asking for a decision
Right.
from us, but they're gonna want input from us at that joint meeting, right?
sensible and
Be prepared to talk
Yeah,
about
if
some of these
if you
things.
guys have an opinion, the more formed your opinion is, the better off we are at a work session so that we could reach a solution. If you guys are all feeling something similar about some of these topics, we can talk about them
Everybody has
one by
different
one.
opinions, we don't get anywhere.
Around
Real sense.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to have Pete go through them one by one and see if you take the
Yeah, I can
temperature?
start over and go back through these if you want.
And if we get to the joint work session with city commission, that has been disconnected from the code. The code is moving ahead on its own schedule.
Correct.
And this height thing that we're struggling with would start its own schedule, which could
Yeah,
take
they pulled it out.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
months,
not
years.
exactly. I mean, it won't have its own schedule. It will be part of the residue equitable housing stuff that will move along more or less together until it doesn't.
Right. But if,
So let's say you guys decided to leave it the way it is. You decided not to do short-term rentals because you just decided that wasn't a priority, and you decided not to take on shelters because that wasn't a priority. Then
Shelters isn't coming down to them.
no, I'm saying the city generally, then the residue items will die of their own because they will just die. No, we don't have to take action on all three of those or even one of them. You know, we can just take action on one. So they will be bundled together until they're not.
Lori,
I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're not, this isn't gonna be Heights separated entirely, and Heights is gonna run its own course. Heights is gonna, you guys are gonna decide on Heights with the city commission, it's gonna go to the city commission, and then the city commission is gonna decide if short-term rentals and shelters are ready to go, and they wanna just go with two and not short-term rentals yet, or they'll decide how to package them, but everything will stay more or less together.
but a work session would be more
Giving them
productive
ideas.
and more people understanding it, and instead of having one session, first half hour is gonna be height, second half hour is gonna be short-term rentals, and the others are shelters, and you're talking crosswords and up and down.
Yeah, but you're
It
not
creates
gonna-
a little confusion.
The only one they asked for a joint work session was this one.
The height. that's
Why,
all
I
I've
don't
heard.
know.
That's all I've heard so far.
Lori, do you remember how we voted the last time when we voted on this? I know it was a pretty extensive conversation like we're having here.
I can't recall what the vote was.
We had a long conversation about it.
It doesn't matter. I mean, the result,
I'm wondering why it's coming back when it was already decided by us.
they just want to talk about it more and
Or
they
they
want
want
to
to
know.
confuse the new groups.
No, that's not true. I mean, they want to listen to you and hear your input face to face or eye to eye too. I mean, I think it's good. You're worried about getting information carried across. And so they want to they want to be thoughtful about it. It's kind of complex.
The only
And
reason-
I
so,
don't believe their minds are made up on
The
this.
only reason I ask is before, and nothing against this group here, but we had somebody from Lake Oswego, who was a design planner. We had several people on here who knew and had seen other cities and what they'd gone through. And now all of a sudden, it seems like we gave them a decision, they want to throw it back to us and get some more information from us, but those people were worked for cities, and they were pretty knowledgeable.
Well, we've done a good job about inviting the other planning commissioners and letting them know
Yeah.
when things are coming
And
back.
one of
I would
them's on
say-
city council.
I think-
At the same time, not only has this planning commission changed, the city
So has the city
commission has
commission.
changed,
Yeah.
taken a new flavor
Yep.
completely. So we're both in the same change from the past. I don't know, are we trying to divorce ourselves from the past and say, we're going to work with what we've got here in the planning and the city to come up with an agreement? It's good to have a little history there.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned
but not
about.
nail everything to what
Seems
was
we-
got.
Yeah, I
Seems we
wouldn't
do
read
that a
too
lot.
much into it. I would say that it was complex. Everything else is moving forward. They wanted to hear from you directly and think about it a little bit more. And that's a good thing.
It seems we go back and change a lot.
There's one other thing that we haven't considered here in this conversation. If we're going to be classified as a regional center, that to me suggests congestion.
Yes.
Congestion to me suggests services. Because in the ultimate outcome, you're dealing with servicing people. Police protection, fire protection, traffic movement, various services that people need. And one of the things that I just detest, I just hate, is shoulder-to-shoulder people on a sidewalk like a bunch of lemmings. And I don't think that we want this for Oregon City. We are restricted in this area downtown by the geography of the face of a cliff going out infinitum and a river on the other side, and we're trying to squeeze McLaughlin Boulevard in there, and we're gonna, and that thing is overloaded. Canby is gonna continue to grow. Molisle is gonna continue to grow. We're gonna continue to be the funnel. The state legislature has recognized 205 has got to be improved, retrofitted, and widened. And I think that talking about the height of buildings, you've got to include the density that brings with it. Because you're going to bring people, more people, at least 5,000 people, more into the downtown limited area, space-wise. And how are you going to address their needs for transportation? And how are you going to address their needs for emergency services?
Yeah.
There will be. And I think, frankly, that's and in addition to that, then you've got the Riverwalk. And somebody in Portland is figuring out right now as we're talking, they're going to take advantage of that river and bring a boat up here to, and all those hotels that are being built downtown Portland, and they're advertising right now to come out and see Oregon City at the end of the Oregon Trail. And we're talking congestion. We're talking, you got to ask yourself, is this what we want Oregon City to be? Well, folks, we're not going to have much of a choice, because there's people in various investment groups throughout this country that are looking at Oregon City and say, I mean, you know, we had a hotel do that. All these regional corporations and various types of restaurants and hotels and stuff that they got Oregon City in their sights. The question is, how are we going to deal with congestion? And this is what that boils down to in downtown Oregon City.
Well,
Mark this point in history. Mark, Bob and I agree, whole 100%.
Or just keep in mind, we're talking about a 4-story building or a 6-story building. We're not talking about an 80s. I mean, like, that we're talking about
Sort of think globally.
such,
yeah, we don't want everybody to come and see the falls and decide to live in Oregon City. You know, that would be.
Come visit, don't stay.
But the people that are investing money, probably even today or yesterday or tomorrow in the Riverwalk and the rest of the 20 acres there, certainly are going to pour a lot of money into that development. And it's going to take a lot of weekend or weekday travelers from around the world that land in Oregon City for a week or 10 days and look at everything. They move on, and as soon as they move on, there will be another 10,000 visitors that want to spend a short period of time here. And how do we take care of the investors getting a return on their investment? Where are they going to sleep and eat and party and look at rivers or go up and down rivers?
I'm not looking at public convenience. I'm looking at public safety.
I know you're going to,
Public safety.
and there will be some increase in, Oregon City is already a kind of a work area for the county. We have more people in Oregon City on a weekday basis that are working in the city that far pushes our population of the city past that 35,000 limit we have. I don't know exactly what it is.
Let's look at the hospital and people that work there.
The courthouse is moving up there, it's all moving uptown.
Well, this is some of the things I think we ought to talk
Yeah.
with the city commission about at our work session. I'm getting a little anxious about talking details all the time, when we should be talking, what do we really want to be?
Yeah.
And how do we get there?
And how long will it take us to get there? We're not going to get there.
And can we afford it?
In 5 years or 10 years, totally, we're going to make some steps. And if we make the right steps that draws in a little more people, we'll make next steps and go. But it's going to be 20, 30 years, I think, before it's...
And the metro designation as a regional center puts some requirements on what we do, right? We have to allow a certain amount of density because we've been set as a regional center.
Yes, but we're not out of compliance today. You're not compelled to raise any height limits, but I would discourage you from reducing them.
So, yeah, if they want us to be a regional center, then why doesn't this county or the state put more money into, that's being a pass-through?
No, now you're talking common sense.
I'm just saying, yeah, common sense. They want us to be center, then help us, give us
We
the
do have a
money.
lot of benefits for having a regional center, and that has
Not to
helped
213.
with a lot, well, maybe, you're right, we do have one intersection that is nowhere near here that is problematic. But, it has helped us with a lot of grants and other things showing that we are building towards we are designated a regional center and that we're building things like residential downtown. I mean, I like the discussion about jobs and homes. Where do we want people to live here, and what tools do we need to make more jobs and homes downtown?
I have a question. The 75-foot height limit area, how long has that been 75 feet maximum height? Is that current or is that not? What's the current height limit?
We drastically changed our code in 2004, and that's when we created the mixed-use downtown. We rezoned a lot of what was industrial, shocker, because it looks industrial now,
Yeah.
to mixed-use downtown in 2004. And so
15 years.
that's when it was created.
Okay.
It was of various zoning designations before that, and so the MUD is definitely a lot broader. It wasn't a one-for-one swap from the prior. But 2004.
Okay.
And what is that height limitation now? Sorry, I just cut you off.
Yeah, that's great. I'll keep talking later.
This mixed bag, I mean,
But it didn't instantly make all the buildings 75 feet high. How many buildings have been built since then?
They're old.
How many old buildings got torn down?
I don't think there's any 75-foot
No, so it doesn't make, it doesn't have any
in
instant
that whole area.
change.
They're actually
Let's
remodeling
see.
some of the old homes in that
Yeah.
area.
Some of the old buildings are remodeled. I know a guy that remodels some of the buildings down there, makes restaurants. So just zoning at 75 doesn't mean it's going to get raised and
No.
built at 75.
But
It's just potential.
It starts the investors from
From starting to accumulate
to say,
land.
hey, something's going on in Oregon City, let's go.
They'll start buying up all their land.
But they have
investors.
75-foot heights since 2004 and they haven't.
I think we could spin around in circles
I don't want
Yeah.
investors.
a way long time here. What do we, Pete, Laura, from what, your direction from the city commission, do we need to do more tonight? If so, what do we need to do?
Well, I just want to kind of summarize what's in our memorandum. So for staff's comments, on page 2, there is support, or there was support from the previous planning commission of retaining the view of the end of the Oregon Trail from I-205. The reduced maximum height limit of the properties which are within 500 feet of the end of the Oregon Trail, but not located between the EOT and the I-205 don't need to be reduced if the purpose is preserving a view only to I-205. But there's definitely some public concern that the EOT was not adequately protected in terms of, view corridors towards it. And so staff suggests that, if the single-family home provision is problematic. It would be simpler if that was not in the code from our perspective. And that would be a lot more consistent and easy to implement in terms of that. But
If it was just gone altogether.
yeah, because you're talking about a non-conforming use having an impact on a conforming use, essentially. And
How many homes did that affect?
well, got a slide in here with.
The odd part about it is too, is like that house could redevelop to be 75 feet tall, but
Right.
it just put a 45-foot limit on the property next door.
Anytime you see a red dot on this map is, so that's
There's
about
a few down there.
40 or 50 dots.
Those guys there.
Does adjacent mean across the street?
Well, here's the interpretive center, so these.
You're talking about the interpretive center now, not
Hang on,
downtown.
let's
But that's what I'm trying to clarify.
This is within 100.
Abutting means the tax lots have
Abutting, you're right.
abutting has to, the tax lots have to touch.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Which one?
Tom, what was your question?
Is it an interpretive center you're addressing right now or downtown? Because they're two different monkeys. What are you talking about?
I'm talking
right
about the single-family residential.
now? Of interpretive center area or downtown area?
No, that's a separate section.
All of it.
All of it.
Okay.
I don't see them as all
So, I
comparable at
mean,
all, downtown versus
I
up there.
think
We're talking about adjacent to
I know.
single-family houses.
I know.
And you see a difference between whether they're out by the EOT or whether they're down.
I can't see anything that's single family out by the EOT,
Yeah.
mainly because of the landfill out there, as dangerous as it is.
I think
No, this is talking about existing,
Existing.
single-family houses that are in that 75-foot zone. The limit would be 45 feet on the adjacent property
In the EOT area.
in the whole
Any portion.
area in the whole MUD area that we're talking about, if you're next to an existing single-family house.
See, I see the two areas, I pass by there every day, I come down Abernathy and I know the EOT area, and I see very little homes, but they're changing them over to businesses now. And they've been tearing some down.
Go back to the map
It's
with the red
irrelevant
dots.
within 500 feet of the Oregon Trail Center because it's already limited to 45 feet.
Right, even though somebody, I mean, I know the mayor would like to build a whole center.
Go to the red dots.
Yeah.
Put the red dots back up.
Steve, is there really a house on 99? I thought there was a radiator shop there.
Well, it might be a home occupation. What we
It
did
is
was,
Radiator Shop, he's my neighbor.
we didn't know if it was a single-family,
house?
but we checked to see whether there was an issued business license or not.
I was wondering if that would restrict building height.
Pardon?
Would that restrict the building height, that residential?
If it is
Status.
being used as a residence, yes.
No, because it's in it's in the downtown design district, which is 58.
Okay, so it wouldn't
Oh,
turn
you're
into one of those
talking
strange
about
little alcoves where there's a house and a building around it?
Yeah, so at least the downtown design district is very straightforward. That's-
Mike,
There's no similar exclusion for single-family in that area.
when we were discussing the hotel back then, the major concern also was a historic home.
Right.
It's used as an office
Right.
right now, and I'm not sure where it is on this map, not there, but it was up across from the EOT.
Yeah,
But I'm looking at that whole property there, I don't see any homes except along Abernathy Boulevard in there. There's no other homes in that whole landfill area there.
Hackett House.
Yeah, the Hackett House.
That's right
It's a
there.
it's a business because it's.
Right, I'm saying it's not a home, I said it's not
All
residential.
these over here.
That's on Abernathy, yeah, I pass by those each day, but nothing in
And
that whole
here?
area.
Yeah.
Those are all turning into businesses now, well, there's 3 down there that,
Tom, I think you hit the nail on the head that we really have a hard time knowing what's a business and what's a house.
Yeah,
We
I've
know
been
what we have
watching
business
change.
license for and what we don't. We know that the buildings look like houses because they were houses at some point.
Yeah.
But this is really hard to regulate because how do we tell
It's
applicants
zoned
what the
residential,
height
but
is?
he's got an office in it, so.
It's not, yeah,
it's
but it's
really-
not
It's
zoned
not
residential.
zoned residential.
Like you,
It's a non-conforming, there's an existing residential home there, but
Yeah.
it's non-conforming.
Right.
The rest of it is that Gladys McCoy building and all that, all along Abernathy. There was only 2 or 3 homes there now, one's
Right.
an attorney's
Are we
office.
trying to protect that residential or small business, a 1 or 2 story house? Protect their property rights some way with this? We won't build you can't build a 45-footer in front of them, or, I don't know what it is. Are we trying to protect their view of the river or Westland? Or are they trying to protect their property values?
We can speculate because there's no intent statement in the code.
Because there's what?
There's no intent statement in the code behind
there's
why
no
these.
intent. If they could build higher, then they could perhaps have more value. If we're trying to say, we're not gonna have such a tall looming building next to you, that's fine, but if there's a 40-foot tall, 5-foot tall building, does that have the same effect anyway?
It's
A
probably
building blocks their view.
You know, the 4 and 6, what's the difference between 4 and 6 stories?
not much, it's already too.
I think it probably enhances the value of that single-family home because the developer is going to want to buy that and pay more money for it. So
As
they
a
don't have to
parking
worry
lot or whatever.
Yeah.
The thing I see on here, after having lived in this whole area for so long and
all right.
drive through there, the downtown area to me is distinctly different than all that area out there. I know we're talking about the whole areas of MUD or MUC or whatever, but this area downtown with the bluffs right above it and behind it is completely different than that area because those homes along Abernathy, the 2 or 3 homes, and then there's all the trucks for all the state and the county that park there. That's completely different area. The whole area is different than downtown where there are businesses, and we want it to be a business district too, as well as visitors. But for us to decide or to be discussing that area and this area in the same breath to me are different. That's a big open area down there by the EOC. EOC is pretty much I have events going on all the time. People don't even know it exists. There's no more covered wagons down there. It's those blew off years ago. But that area down there is so much more open, and that could be more homes. It could be some higher rises, but it's different than downtown here. That's the way I look at it.
We've got to have a strong statement of intent on these zones, and we don't.
Yeah.
Now, this is where the conversation has to lead us to with the city commission. What is it that we intend to
Good point.
Encourage.
encourage?
Yeah.
Well, I did show you a slide at the beginning here. I mean, this is the intent statement for the zone.
I would say of all the zones in the city, this is the strongest because it is a regional center.
Do you consider,
The intent of what we want in the zoning designation is probably. the
do you
strongest.
consider EOT mixed use downtown, even though it's out?
I think we're talking about what uses are today versus what we could envision possibilities in the future. And the whole thing is zoned the same. It certainly looks extremely different today. I mean, you have industrial, you have open spaces, and then you have, more of a traditional downtown. But thinking, into my grandkids, what will they see and what's far into the future. And we certainly don't have an intent statement as it relates to heights, which is what led to this, which is super confusing.
I stand corrected.
But the intent to the heights is a really good point. We need to be intentional about what our heights are, and
We've all got to read this, understand it together as a commission. And we either support it or we don't. Because attitudes change over time. Conditions change over time. And it's difficult to measure where we are in the scheme of things. I mean, the military is trying to do it all the time, because if they don't understand where the heck they are, the enemy's going to be in their front yard. We've got to understand what's going in our own city. We've got to understand what's going on in our own commission do we agree with this intent? Now, this commission has changed. So when we have our discussion with the city commission, if we were to all read this at the same time and say, okay, we agree with this intent, now where's our code say that we can engage this and make it happen? You see? First, you start with the intent. Do we all agree with that? Our objective is this. And the implications are public safety, servicing the public. Because we're not servicing a building, folks, we're servicing people. You know, I don't want to leave people out of the planning process. That's what we're here for. So that's what I would suggest to the city commission, is that we all agree on the intent. And then here are the zoning regulations to get us there.
Because we can't talk about building heights unless we know what we're intending.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, great point.
It's legislative in discussion, but it eventually gets back to quasi-judicial and putting together the ordinance and public hearings and that kind of stuff, which we're engaged in right now.
Well, I mentioned that comprehensive plan also sets the basis for some of the zoning. So there's some goals and policies that I didn't include in this presentation that we probably want to pay attention to. Because the comprehensive plan designation for this area is mixed use downtown, right? So you're talking about not just the zoning, but the comprehensive plan.
Right. Which is still, we're still working on getting the funding to go ahead with that comp plan revision, right? Okay.
All right.
Anything else on this? Or have we
That's-
murdered an already dead horse?
So there's a few additional slides in this presentation that weren't in your packet, so.
Okay.
Just so you know. Yeah.
We can email it to you
Yeah.
as well.
Okay.
William.
Or do you want to go through them quickly? Is it?
Well, I got to the end. Let me just go back through them again. So
I want to make sure you're prepared, though, for the work session. Do we need another time here to make sure we're all on the same page? Do we know what we want, or?
I'm prepared.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we need to.
You know, it's more of what you just said, Bob.
Discuss it more.
Read that, do we all agree on it, then how are we going to get there? Because I don't think we're all
That's
going to agree on
everything.
every little thing of that detail.
that's everything I have.
Okay.
Is there any other additional information other than we'll pull out the excerpt goals and policies from the comprehensive plan that talk about this as well? Any other information that we could help provide you to better support you for your discussion with the city commission?
I guess I'm going to have to go back and watch what we said before.
There's some view corridor language in the comprehensive plan, that we would also share with you, so you can kind of see how general it is, as opposed to, it's not showing you a view corridor on a map and saying, this is a view corridor, you need to protect it. Some comprehensive plans are that specific, but ours is more, it's just a narrative. It says, these are important views, like the Willamette River and that sort of thing.
Do we have, I mean, I know what you just said, but
Right.
do we have an actual corridor protected, or just that these are important?
It's just narrative statements that say
All
that
by
these,
the elevator looking down on the river. I was wondering if
there's no
that's-
graphic that shows it.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people go out that elevator, and that's how they see the whole valley of
Right.
the city, Main Street.
Yeah.
We took away one of the most fantastic views in Oregon City by saying no parking and putting collards up there on the view. We just cut our nose off because of a couple of teenage kids and dadgum greasers.
I didn't even know where it was.
Okay, before we move on to approval of the minutes, I'd like to ask Ms. Richter a question. It came up during that hearing, and I want to make sure I understand in case it comes up again. If I put in a development proposal today, I have to comply with today's code and ask for variances as necessary if I can't comply with today's code. If the code changes before I move any dirt and makes it harder or easier, I guess, I would have to
Withdraw
submit a
and
revised.
resubmit.
Okay. Whether
Either
it gets
withdraw
more
or
restrictive restrictive or less restrictive, I would have to resubmit according to, if I wanted to go by the new
If you wanted to
rules.
go by the new rules, you.
Or I can continue on with the rules that I already have.
So it's called the fixed goalpost rule. So the goalposts are fixed when the application's filed, assuming some things happen. And those are the standards that apply all the way through till it's final. When it's final, then it's final when you have an approval to build what you want to build, or you have a denial. If the code changes any time in between there, it doesn't matter. Even if the code changes afterwards, doesn't matter. If they want to change something, they have to either withdraw and resubmit to fix the goalposts under the new code. Or they have to, if it's after the approval, submit an amendment to the site plan, like Laura said.
Is that same thing hold true with concept plans? If it's gone all the way through and then somebody wants to make changes to it, they have to go back and start over?
Well, concept plans are different because concept plans fix the goalposts for the whole 5 phases or however many phases of the project. And so it's a little more flexible because it is a concept plan.
Just point of clarification, we have an awful thing in our code where we call master plans concept plans, and then we also have concept plans for UDD expansion areas. So is your
So
question
you're
really?
talking about master plans and not.
Well, I was referring to the fact that some people try to come in and make changes to a concept plan after it had been approved by the city. I was just
Oh,
asking.
you're talking about
UDD
Park Place.
expansion, yeah.
You're talking about
Park
Park
Place
Place
as an
concept
example.
plan.
That was an
Not,
example of what you
I was
said.
thinking of master plans.
We
Sorry,
use the same word for 2 different things, and it's awful. We need to fix that.
sorry.
No, I just was trying to
No,
understand.
you cannot change the concept plan
That's why
without
they came
going
back
through
in, okay,
a legislative process, just like we are code amendments.
okay, just wanted to.
Comprehensive plan amendment.
Okay, thank you. Next up, approval of the minutes from January 28th meeting. Everybody had a chance to look at that. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes from January 28th, 2019.
Second?
Okay. Moved and seconded. Go for the vote.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Commissioner Guile?
Second now, you're changing it around.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Schlagenhofer?
Aye.
Commissioner Gage?
Aye.
Commissioner Stoll? Commissioner Mitchell?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, any communications?
Yeah, I am happy to announce shortly after your request to add development projects to the bottom banner. It took some finagling, but I think a week or 2 after that, it was added. So now you can go to the city homepage and you can see the development projects, both public works projects as well as people who apply for development under one umbrella on one map, and you can get there in multiple places, and they'll be easier. You can get to it on your mobile app or on a full-screen computer.
Is this under the works of that gentleman who was at the city hall last week explaining what he's done to the whole system for the city?
No, that's our permitting system.
Oh, it's something
This
entirely different.
Was a recommendation from the planning commission.
Okay, cool.
And we made it happen. So thank you for your recommendation.
That was a great idea.
Thank you for the execution. It looks great. I did notice it. I meant to say it and I forgot, but thank you.
Oh, there it is.
The other thing is that, so we'll have a June 24th meeting. We're going to talk about some historic review board policies and then our proposed public safety building at Mount Pleasant. And then in July, we don't have anything on the schedule yet, so I'll keep you updated on if there's any cancellations, or we'll probably talk about topics related to code amendments. And then the joint work session with the city commission related to height and MUD is not scheduled, but I'll let you know when it is. It will be on a city commission work session date, which is the second Tuesday of the month.
On the Historic Review Board amendments, do we have an official role in that process, or we're just going to be aware of what is being proposed?
You're just going to be aware, what it says is that you can comment if you want to.
Okay.
And so
But we don't
we're
have
giving it to you.
approval.
No,
Okay,
no.
good.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Anything else?
I've got a question. Where do we stand on the annexation tree removal problem?
The proposed code amendments have it added as an additional annexation factor, right? Or did we take it away?
Yes,
They kept
it was added.
Okay.
It's just a factor. It's not that they can't because we don't own the property. It's in the county, but it is a factor that we can look at if they cut them all down while we're in the process of discussing it. I guess that's the way they came up with.
So, anything else for the good of the order? We're adjourned.
Quick question for anybody. I can't vote.